but I didn't know what the size of the screen was. So.
Greenberg, Eric Allen, Mike Garafolo, NFL Insider for NFL Network. We have a great show. Mike's our first guest. We got Trevor Sikkema from PFF. We have Adam Kaplan, Sirius XM. But batting leadoff over here is Mike Garafolo, very busy man here at the Combine in Indianapolis. We just heard Joe Douglas talk a couple minutes ago.
Yeah.
Obviously, quarterback, the biggest topic, let's say. Derek Carr, he was able to talk about because he's an unrestricted free agent as it is. What is your take on right now the quarterback landscape and the New York Jets?
Well, Derek Carr's in a favorable position for himself from a timeline standpoint because outside of potentially Aaron Rodgers in a trade, everybody else has got to wait until you get the free agency. Jimmy Garoppolo is going to have to wait. Geno Smith potentially is going to have to wait. So some of these other guys in that boat, Derek Carr not. And it's very rare that you see a veteran come to the scouting combine to conduct his business. I made the point on NFL Network earlier. The only one that I can remember was D'Angelo Hall. Back in 2008, the Giants and the Falcons, I guess he was a Falcon at the time, were discussing a potential trade of D'Angelo Hall to the Giants, and I reported it. The next day, D. Hall comes flying through the hallways of the Indianapolis Convention Center, and it was like, what was that D'Angelo Hall? And he held a session right there. He wasn't there for that. He was there because he just enjoyed the combine and seeing the prospects. But all of a sudden, it became like he was conducting business. Yeah. So I don't think since then, which was 2008, so 15 years, I don't think I had a veteran like Derek Carr here conducting business when we're usually focused on the draft and the draft prospects. So it's a unique situation. Joe Douglas just spoke highly of Derek Carr, and I can tell you the feelings went both ways. Coming out of that visit, it was like vibes on this side, great. Vibes on this side, great. Joe called it fantastic today. That's the word that he used. So it went from, all right, they're exploring their options to, wow, this feels like this really could happen right now. So Derek Carr would like to make a decision before the negotiating window, which opens on March 13th. So he'd like to beat everybody else to the punch, if at all possible. The only other thing that we're waiting on in the meantime is Aaron Rodgers, which Douglas was asked about today. Didn't quite answer it directly, but I think it was pretty evident that certainly he's had communication with the Packers and some other teams as well regarding their available quarterbacks. So let's see where it goes.
What do you anticipate happening with Rodgers? That's what everybody's talking about. And also, do you first expect him to play football next year? It's just a question of where.
I want to answer these questions, right? And I want to feel confident about it. But this guy's such a wild card. And I feel like sometimes when people put things out in the media, he loves to change his mind or maybe postpone it or do, so it's almost like you're talking about this stuff and you're hearing things out of Green Bay, which feels like the sides are heading to a divorce and headed to or it just feels like it's time right
can
now.
you speak to what the Packers just talked about this morning? Because their GM actually addressed the situation here in Indy.
And the way that he gave I don't want to call it a non-answer, but reading between the lines of what he said, certainly they think highly of Jordan Love. Now, look, when they moved on from Brett Favre, they didn't know for sure they had a great one in Aaron Rodgers. They felt pretty good about it. They don't know for sure they've got a good quarterback in Jordan Love, but I can tell you they feel pretty good about it. What he's saying up there about Jordan Love is certainly the feeling within the building. Now, the problem is Rodgers holds the cards. If Rodgers says, I am coming back and I'm playing for the Packers, there's really not a lot they can do about it. That's what makes it so difficult. Every bit of leverage right now is in Rodgers' corner. So, yes, I do believe that if he came back and said, look, I want to play football, which I still think he does, and it's hard to walk away from $60 million no matter how much you've made previously. It's still $60 million. So I feel like if he comes back and says, guys, I just think it's time. Like, it's run its course here. I love this organization. I love what we've done here, but it's time to move on. I think they're very fine with it, to be honest with you.
What about trade compensation? Do you have any kind of understanding, when you factor in the money that you just mentioned, what a potential trade to acquire Aaron Rodgers would look like?
Yeah, I think that Brian Gutekunst knows that if he's got teams lined up or he gets the green light from Aaron Rodgers, yes, he is advanced in his career. He doesn't have 15 years left. I don't know. Maybe he's got 5. Who knows? But it's to the point where he could still bring back significant compensation in the form of first-round pick plus. I don't know that it's going to be 2. I mean, that seems to be excessive. But I think it's a first-round type value, and maybe it's a player coming back or whatever it is. Because that's the unique part of it is if you've got Jordan Love and he's ready to play, if you get a player in return, that helps you now. You don't have to – a lot of teams will unload a quarterback like the Seahawks and say, hey, we're going to get some draft compensation to help us build down the line. The Packers are a team that's in position to win right now if Jordan Love is as good as they think he is. So, there's ways to get around that. So it'll be significant return for Aaron Rodgers for sure.
Carr, you said that he feels very positive about the Jets. We heard Joe Douglas gush about him. It's a fantastic visit. Said he's ultra competitive, ultra intelligent. What do the Jets have going for them compared to the other teams in the running for Derek Carr?
Yeah, I had one question that I was going to be able to get in to Joe today. And I was toying with the idea of, do I ask about Zach Wilson? Because I'd love to get his perspective on that, which I wound up doing. The other one, but this was a more difficult – the reason I didn't go with this is because it's a more difficult question for him to answer because it was going to be from Derek's perspective. I said, look, you clearly were enamored with your visit with Derek Carr. What's your sense of how he reacted to it? So I'll give you what I know, having talked to people close to Derek, and it's that, there's a lot of talent on this team. He loves the coaching staff. He and Saleh apparently hit it off extremely well, which when I talked to somebody close to Derek said, I knew that was going to happen because I know both guys. And I just knew that was going to be just a match made in heaven. And Robert Saleh came away with tremendous vibes toward Derek Carr and vice versa on that. So you look at this roster, the way I keep describing the Jets is they're a quarterback away, right? And that's no slight to Mike White or to Zach Wilson. I know these guys are out there trying their best, and it was a rocky season from an injury standpoint and a performance standpoint, whatever. But you get a guy in there, he comes in, he plays consistent football, he makes smart decisions with the football. You've got enough talent around him on both sides of the football. This team's going to the playoffs.
Well, so I'm glad you brought that up. And this might be a difficult question to answer, but hypothetically speaking, the Jets add a veteran, let's say it's one of the two guys that we've just discussed.
Yep.
How does that change how the Jets are viewed nationally, do you think?
I know I'll give you the national perspective, even though I'm, 20 minutes from the facility in Jersey. So I give you a little bit of both, right? I guess is what I'm doing. I think that a lot of people nationally are blind to how much talent is on this team. I don't think they realize what a job Joe Douglas has done with this organization. And, you get late in the season. Yes, they were competitive, but then there was a losing streak toward the end of the season. And I think they fall off a lot of people's radar and not seeing what some of these young guys are doing week in and week out and what a talent Garrett Wilson is. And some of these other wide receivers, I know Elijah Moore was very frustrated. And all of a sudden that week, it was against Chicago. I think I covered the game. I can't remember which one it was. And he erupted and how
Chicago.
Happy he was. And the vibe in the locker room toward him. And it was like, okay, see, it's just that little spark to bring this thing all together. And now all of a sudden you've got yourselves a competitive team. I would hope that would be the perception around the league and around the nation. If not, I'm happy to provide it.
So we're happy to have you provide it.
Yeah, there you go.
You think Carr wants something in place with whichever team he's going to prior to March 13th. Obviously, league year starts March 15th. What do you think about the possible transition from him to the East Coast? Here's a kid who went to Fresno State, played with the Raiders, obviously in Las Vegas, and then it looks like it's all East Coast teams, but you live in the Northeast.
Yeah.
What do you think about him actually? Obviously, he's hitting it off with people inside the organization, loves the talent on the team.
Yeah.
What do you think about him in the New York market?
I think he's going to have a conversation with some folks, including his brother, who played in this market. I know he was a backup quarterback with the Giants, but he understands the market. You can't listen to everything. So I think he's going to have to find a way to shut some things out. Previously in his career, I could tell he got rankled by some things that he heard. I think he's very active on social media as far as seeing replies and mentions and all that stuff. That'll drive you crazy. I can't do it, and I'm not an NFL quarterback. So
especially being in the New York market.
Well, that's what. Yeah. So I think he's going to have to learn to shut some stuff out if again he indeed winds up being the guy for the Jets. But I think he's mentally strong enough to handle it. I also, it's going to be two different vibes. Like you bring in Aaron Rodgers, you're going to have to do a lot of things the way that Rodgers wants you to do it. You bring in Derek Carr, he's got a way about him, and he's confident and he's strong-willed in a lot of ways, but he'll also mold himself toward the culture that's already been established here. So it'll be really interesting to see the different dynamic based on what guy comes in. It's almost like Derek Carr. Aaron Rodgers has been a better player over his career. Sure. Still might be a better player, right? Like I'm not debating that. But Carr almost seems like a better fit when you've got guys who have already been established here and you've got a culture that's on its way up, if that makes sense.
You watch a lot from the Combine presented by Verizon. Ethan Greenberg, Eric Allen, Mike Garafolo. Mike, a couple more questions before we let you go. We've obviously talked about the quarterback for very good reason for the Jets, but the Jets have some free agents of their own that played pretty big pieces on their team. Thinking about guys like Quincy Williams this past year, Sheldon Rankins, Quan Alexander, to a degree. Just as free agency is around the corner, what are different positions or different players outside of quarterback that you think the Jets could make sense for?
Yeah, and I believe they want Rankins back. I believe they want all those guys back, to be honest with you, just at the right price, right? Because you also now have to worry about paying Quinn and Williams a ton of money, which is definitely coming his way. They've already had some preliminary discussions, and that guy's going to get every penny that he deserves. So, it's going to be a different kind of approach. It's going to be more of a budgetarily wise approach to free agency and some of these guys that you can get in to be role players at a reasonable cost. Jets, to me, do not strike me as big spenders outside of the quarterback market. So, I think, if you don't get those guys back, you're looking to address that position with some other guys at defensive line or linebacker if you're not able to retain those two guys that we talked about. So, it's once that quarterback piece falls into place, I think you're confident enough in what you've got around you on both sides of the ball that you don't have to do a whole lot of tinkering here. Continue to build through the draft, right? Like it's not going to be last year's draft. It's not going to be. I mean, it was 4 first-round picks because Hall was, in their minds, a first round, and they tried to come back into the first round at the back end to get there. So I consider him a 4th first-round pick. You continue to do that, you're going to be just fine for the long haul.
Douglas was clear about it today that the Jets can create a lot of flexibility. Right now, as they stand, I think they're over the cap, but he said we can create a ton of cap space. There is going to be flexibility for us moving ahead.
Yeah, I'm not a big, the cap is fake guy because the cap is real, but it's bendable, right? Like you can massage it, you can get around it. I mean, you've got Jason Light up there. The Buccaneers are $55 million over the cap, and he's still talking about their ability to make moves, and it's just you're going to start to see a flurry of transactions and moves to allow teams to get under. They'll be okay in that regard. I'm not concerned about them financially. Again, not big spenders, but enough to fill some holes that pop up.
Last question for me, other than the quarterback dominoes, what's your favorite storyline here in Indy this week?
Other than the quarterback dominoes, my favorite storyline this week. Can I cheat and say quarterbacks in the draft?
Yeah,
because,
of course.
Yeah, there's a lot of eye of the beholder here. It almost feels like, not to bring up bad memories, but the Baker Mayfield, Sam Darnold, Josh Allen, where it was like one team's third quarterback is another team's first quarterback, and a lot of people like what they see in Will Levis, but then a lot of people turn on the tape from last year and say, despite the fact that he didn't have a lot of support, just didn't see enough to make him an elite quarterback in my mind. So I think Anthony Richardson from Florida is going to absolutely light it up. The combines and pro days are an advantage for guys who are incredibly gifted. Okay, and he is incredibly gifted. So I think that's one thing that I'm going to be watching this week to see how much he can get into the minds of these guys and say, look, the upside is unbelievable for me, and how much does that vault him up with the guys that are in the minds of evaluators like Bryce Young's more of a sure thing.
Awesome. Mike, thank you very much. Enjoy.
You got it, boys.
Thanks, brother.
Yep.
Good luck with the shrimp cocktail, the sleep, everything that comes with covering the Combine in Indianapolis. You want to see more of Mike Garafolo. You want to see more of his colleagues on NFL Network. This is the Combine coverage. On Thursday, the on-field workouts begin with the defensive linemen and the linebackers. On Friday, the defensive backs go. Saturday, which is what Mike was just talking about, the quarterbacks. It's going to be a very interesting class headlined by Bryce Young. The receivers and tight ends are all set to take the field on Saturday, but Bryce Young, as of now, not set to throw, but C.J. Stroud, Anthony Richardson set to go through drills. And then on Sunday, wrapping things up at Lucas Oil Stadium, the running backs and the offensive linemen. And you can catch the full coverage on NFL Network. You're watching live from the Combine, presented by Verizon. Ethan Greenberg, Eric Allen, Trevor Sikkema, Pro Football Focus. thanks for joining us. Did I say that right?
You did. You nailed
Nice.
it. You nailed it, which is great.
Thank you.
Wow.
What's the worst somebody's pronounced your name, your last name? Because Trevor's pretty straightforward.
Somebody will throw like a Y in there, like Psychema, or like an H, a Sikahema, and I'm like, all right, well, I guess it's close enough. I don't need to correct you, but you nailed it. I appreciate it.
All right, no problem. So we just talked to Mike Garafolo a lot about the Jets quarterbacks.
Yeah.
Which is obviously we're going to get to you and your take on potentially Derek Carr and Rodgers as well.
Mm-hmm.
But let's just kind of start with more of a free agent theme, I'd say. And that's the restructuring process that the Jets, Joe Douglas said they have not done it yet, but there's obviously a lot that different teams can do. Some teams you've seen restructure deals in the past days. For the Jets right now, from a national perspective, it seems like there are players like Carl Lawson, Jordan Whitehead, Braxton Berrios,
right,
who are in that mold where you could move on from them, but also you could keep them because they play big roles for the team. Where do you stand on those players, and Corey Davis being one of them? Are there anybody that stands out to you where you think the Jets should, in fact, keep those players?
Yeah, well, I really like Carl Lawson a lot. Obviously, like, injuries go into it, but I think that when he's healthy, he's a really good pass rusher. And this is a team for the Jets that, you know, the best organizations, the best front offices understand where they are, and they put that into their evaluations of how they use their draft picks, how they use their money, right? Because these players, you could look at them and you could say, yeah, we might be able to upgrade in different places. We might be able to move on from them. We might be able to draft a different guy. But the Jets are in a position where this could absolutely be a playoff team next year, right? And familiarity with the coaches and the playbook and the scheme and everything for some of these guys might be worth restructuring and keeping them around. And so I think, you know, Lawson is the one who, if he's healthy, if everything checks out, like I like Carl Lawson a lot. I like that signing when it originally happened, so I still do have some faith in that. Corey Davis is somebody who I loved a lot in the draft when he was coming out. And, you know, the interesting part about Davis is if they were to move on from him, there's just not a lot of options in free agency or even in the draft that kind of can be that on the line of scrimmage X receiver that you have that can really give you a lot of flexibility with the different receivers, to how you align your tight ends, whether they're on the line of scrimmage, off the line of scrimmage, that different kinds of things. It starts with having a receiver that you are comfortable enough to play on the line of scrimmage, play against press, be able to get physical against different corners. And for as much as I know some people probably wanted to see more out of Corey Davis during his time with the Jets, there's just not a lot of options in free agency and in the draft that are that type of wide receiver. So those are the two guys that I look at when I think of what could be, you know, in and out of the current roster with the Jets. Those are the two guys that I think are pivotal for him.
Yeah, you'd love to see Corey Davis play a full 17 games because he was hot out of the gate last year. And one of the most under the radar aspects to his game is he's one of the better blocking wide receivers in the National Football League.
Yes.
So I know it's about numbers with receivers, but and then can you speak to that? And also, how much do you think Lawson flew under the radar as far as last year is concerned? Because he's more that power guy, not a speed guy.
Right.
But his numbers, quarterback hits, he was always in the backfield, and he's helping out the bottom line. Quinnen Williams having a career year.
And that's the thing with Lawson is, like, I really do feel like if you get a fully healthy year out of him, those numbers that you want to see, the common stats, the common backfield stats, like, I really do think that could be in the cards for him. And so that's why I just – when I look at him, I see so much potential. You referenced some of the more analytical numbers as saying, like, hey, he's getting disruption. He might not have those totals that you're looking for, but this disruption is there. And the common phrase everybody uses is disruption is production, right? Yeah. And so, like, that goes into what you could see from other finishing plays. And then Davis, yeah, absolutely. Again, going back to having a wide receiver that is comfortable playing on the line of scrimmage against press, part of your job is then you have to block very well. Like, a lot of times, whether it's wide receiver screens or quick pass in the flat or things that could just be designed runs to the outside, you've got to have faith that that guy will be able to hold up for you and block. It's not sexy, right? It's not the touchdowns, and it's not the 60-yard bombs, but again, that is also capable of Davis. I was a big fan of him coming out of the draft, and I'm somebody who, you might be talking to somebody who's a little bit biased in season with rose.
I feel old. Glasses, I remember him being at the podium right here in Indianapolis a few years ago. I feel like it was yesterday.
I absolutely loved him coming out of that draft, and so I see a lot of that high potential with him. But the important part of Davis, again, for a team that could have and should have playoff aspirations, a high floor of a player that you can go out there and rely on both passing and running downs, I think that matters a lot for New York.
And going back to what you said before, in terms of the free agent market and the draft prospects. It's like if you do go down the road where you part ways with Davis, like who are you bringing in to fill
Correct.
that void,
Right.
whether that be in the pass or the run. And we are taking YouTube questions if you're watching this, so feel free to fire away. And this is a good one. Brandon Batts wants to know, Trevor, your thoughts on Breece Hall's potential this upcoming season. I know you're smiling, but we just heard Joe Douglas say that the goal right now is to have Breece Hall fully healthy by week one, by the season opener.
Yep.
So I guess as a part of this question, my biggest question is, how effective do you think Breece Hall can be? He goes down week 7, and let's say he is ready by week 1.
Yeah, I mean, it would be huge for them, right? And again, it goes back to being honest with where you are as a team and knowing that even though the AFC is stacked, knowing that you're in a big division with Miami and Buffalo, and obviously the Patriots will play anybody tough, you have the ability to make the playoffs. So obviously, like, Breece Hall starting off the season would be huge for them, but you also want Breece Hall to be ready. You know, if it might take a couple of weeks into the season to make sure that he's like, okay, I'm good, I'm confident, I'm where I need to be, that also might be worth it. So I just think that getting a fully healthy Breece Hall could, because we saw it last year. I mean, an incredible start to his rookie season. If Breece Hall would have been fully healthy the entire year, they might have had the first and second place offensive rookie of the year players, which is just an unbelievable thing, especially when they came away with defensive rookie of the year as well. So it just solidifies what was an incredible draft class, it looks like, for Joe Douglas already. But that's kind of where I'm at with Breece Hall. I mean, you saw the flashes of what he was able to do right out of the gate as a rookie, which is extremely impressive. And as long as you take the timeline correctly with him and get him back healthy at the early portions of the beginning of next year, you've got a really damn good running back that you can lean on in a lot of different situations.
Yeah, Garrett Wilson said it in Arizona that he thinks that Breece Hall would have been the offensive rookie of the year. He would have been a runaway winner.
That's a good teammate.
Yeah,
that's a good teammate.
That's a great teammate.
That's a sign of a good locker room right there. It really is, for him to be able to say that after winning the award himself. So I love hearing that.
These guys are special guys when you're talking about Garrett Wilson and Sauce Gardner and Breece Hall. Okay, so put the GM cap on right now.
Okay.
If you're Joe Douglas.
Yes.
You just talked to the media. You said you had a fantastic visit with Derek Carr last week.
Mm-hmm.
Who, pecking order?
Yeah.
Who are you? Who are you targeting as far as 1, 2, 3?
Free agent quarterbacks or draft quarterbers or
no draft?
Okay.
Because I think it's safe to say the Jets are probably not going to go early for a quarterback in the draft.
Right.
Whether free agency or trade.
Yeah. So I think Rodgers has to be one.
Okay.
Rodgers has to be one.
Yep.
I still thought Rodgers threw the ball really well last year, and it was just a frustrating year for the Packers. Like, people could look at it and say, oh, you know, he took a step back. Is it the age? Is he about to fall off a cliff? I don't think he's about to fall off a cliff. This
might have been the thumb, too, and his numbers weren't that bad.
Right, no. And the tape was not that bad. And he was just, I mean, he was frustrated. He was coming off years and years of working with Devontae Adams as one of the best wide receivers in the NFL, and then you go to two rookies, right? Two guys who are just like learning how to survive in the league, and it's just, I'm sure it was very frustrating for him off of back-to-back MVP seasons. We know that he has kind of asked for passing weapons in the past, so I think he's got to be one. He still gives you the highest ceiling. He's been a consistent playoff quarterback. He's won a Super Bowl before. But that being said, I like Derek Carr. I really do, especially because you're signing him, right? You don't have to give up draft capital for him. So I think that goes into it as well. I think that Carr, I mean, some of the blame was certainly on him as the signal caller in Oakland and then Las Vegas, but he's a talented passer. He's another guy who I was really impressed with arm talent-wise coming out of the draft when he was there at Fresno State a handful of years ago. And I just think that they never really put a consistent team around Derek Carr. And again, that's not to absolve him of blame. There are things that he just didn't go out and execute, but the talent level, and especially for the Jets specifically, the ceiling of getting to the playoffs, winning a playoff game, making that deep run in a really talented AFC conference, I still think that is there with Derek Carr. And so I have been somebody who has said, if you can't go get Rodgers, I would be cool with Derek Carr being there because I think that he gives them that championship ability as well.
For you playing GM here, is it a two-horse race for you, though?
I would think so. Okay. I mean, after that, like,
Lamar's out of the question.
I don't think, because Lamar, obviously, I think the Ravens are going to attack Lamar. I do. I don't think they're clearly they are on two opposite sides of the negotiations here, and unless something drastically changes where they get a long-term deal done and he's not going anywhere anyways, you're going to franchise tag him, and then wherever Lamar goes, you've got to sign him to a massive deal. We know he wants a fully guaranteed deal right now, and even if you don't give him that, you're giving him a massive contract. So you're trading huge draft capital for him, and you are signing him to the most money that you're going to have on your team. That's often a no-no. There's not many situations in which you want to spend both really high draft capital and a lot of cap space on a player, even for one as talented as Lamar. So I would go Aaron Rodgers 1, Derek Carr is 2.
And then you're going to stop.
I mean, like Jimmy Garoppolo, but like I really don't. I don't feel like he gives the Jets the ceiling that this roster deserves for where they are going.
Right.
So that's kind of how I see that.
Okay, so we're going to keep the GM cap on, but now we're going to go to the draft. Okay. Joe Douglas talked about in his podium press conference adding to the offensive line. Elijah Vera Tucker, Mekhi Becton, both on the men. Max Mitchell, the 4th-round pick last year, also on the men.
Yep.
But if you look at the mock drafts right now, a lot of them have, almost all of them have Broderick Jones, the tackle out of Georgia.
Yep.
Paris Johnson, the tackle out of Ohio State. Peter Skoronski's usually off the board by the time the Jets are on the mock draft clock at 13.
Yeah.
And the occasional Brian Branch, the safety out of Alabama. So where would you go right now for the Jets, and how do you rank Broderick Jones and Paris Johnson? Because those are the two most frequent mock drafted players to the Green and
White. This is a hard question before free agency.
Right. Yeah, I know it is, but I'm probably heavily swaying a lot of those mock draft results with those picks, because it feels like every time I do a mock draft for the Jets, one of those guys, Broderick Jones or Paris Johnson, is available, and that's immediately where I go to. That is my first choice, and if I had to kind of rank them for the Jets, I would say that Paris Johnson Jr. would be my number 1 for them, because I already know how versatile he is, right? He played right guard 2 years ago at Ohio State, and I thought he played well, but you could tell, guard wasn't his home position. He was more of an offensive tackle, but Ohio State had experience on the offensive tackle spot. So while he was younger, they still wanted to get him out on the field because he was so talented. So they stick him at right guard, and then this past year, he plays over at left tackle. So that tells me that he is natural enough of an athlete, natural enough of a football player to be able to switch up the footwork, which a lot of people talk about, of switching sides of the offensive line. So he's been able to do that. He's got experience on the interior. He's got experience on the other side as well. So whatever happens with Mekhi Becton, you've got versatility with him and experience to where if you need Paris Johnson to play left tackle, he can. I mean, we saw Elijah Vera Tucker. He's played right tackle before. So all of a sudden, a Paris Johnson Jr. gives you versatility that you would love no matter what. Something that I learned when I was covering the Tampa Bay Buccaneers about 4 or 5 years ago. I was talking to their former head coach, Dirk Cutter, and he would always say, until the offensive line is solidified and until you have a home base, you have to be able to play all these different positions. Because every Sunday, it is simply about getting the best 5 out there in front of your quarterback in whatever spots those are. So we know that injuries happen throughout the season, and having that versatility, Paris Johnson Jr. would be huge. I think Broderick Jones has a high ceiling as well. He would probably be, I would say that it's Paris Johnson number 1, and then Peter Skoronski, I'd probably put it number 2 for that same reason.
Is Skoronski going to shift inside at the next level, or it depends on the team?
It definitely depends on the team. We know that some teams around the NFL have measurable thresholds for a lot of their players. Sometimes they don't want their corners any smaller than 6'1.5". They don't want their offensive tackles with any arms shorter than whatever. It's different for every team, but 34 inches, or I'm just throwing that out there. And so for Peter Skoronski, he's going to show up and he's going to have shorter arms. He's going to be a lot closer to that 32 arm length, arm length, and that's more of an interior player measurable wise. So some teams are going to say, nah, he's an interior guy only, which if you think he's an interior guy only, you're probably not picking him super high. So that's a lot of those teams are probably going to let him fall down the board a little bit, but the tape is damn good at left tackle. So I would absolutely let this guy fail at offensive tackle first before I even thought about moving him inside. And for the Jets, again, that's just another player that gives you a lot of versatility for an inside and out player.
Yeah, it's going to be exciting to see how this all unfolds, especially with free agency right around the corner. Trevor, thanks so much for your time. Appreciate it.
Of course,
and
guys.
Good luck the rest of the week in Indianapolis. There's nothing like Jets game day at MetLife Stadium. Lock in your 2023 season tickets to catch every big moment next season and secure the best seats, lowest prices, and most exclusive benefits. Visit nyjets.com/season tickets to learn more. It happens here, and this is live from the Combine presented by Verizon. Ethan Greenberg, Eric Allen, Adam Kaplan joining the set. Thanks for joining us.
Guys, good to see you again.
Good to see you, absolutely.
It is great to see you.
Let me start you with this. You want to start with one of our questions, or we're taking YouTube questions? We can just fire one off right off
Whatever
the
you want to do, guys. No,
Okay.
but I remember last year, so we were here almost at the exact spot.
Oh, boy.
I was
Here's
exhausted.
my thunder.
I was exhausted. No, I have a very good memory. When you
late
reach my age, my
Kaplan night.
friend,
A
when
late
you reach
Kaplan
my
night.
age, when you reach over 50, you sort of remember certain things. Now, if you ask me what I had for lunch today or breakfast, I'm like, I don't know what I had. Yeah. But anyway, so yeah, I just remember once you got to Sauce Gardner, I was like, okay. And I said, this is the guy. And you go, are you sure? I said, I'm telling you, there's zero chance. Yeah, but they have this guy, and this. I said, no, Joe will never pass up a better player.
So who's the guy this year?
What picks do they have?
13.
No, they have 13. If they stay there, here's the okay. Here I'm going to give you a little bit of a nugget here. Bill Polian told me this when we worked at ESPN, the former Colts general manager, Hall of Famer. Bill said there was somewhere between maybe 12 and 15 true first-round picks. Yes, there have to be 31 or 32 picks. I think this year, they're 31. I think one Miami lost one, right? So, but anyway, 32 usually. But there's a cutoff. There's a drop-off of tiers, and there's usually a drop-off of tier between 12 and 15. So that's something I'll be working on this week when it comes to non-free agency stuff, is what does this draft look like? Look, I know the Georgia kid, the tackle's really good, some really good corners. Like all of a sudden, the Jets get 2 new starting corners, and they're great. DJ Reed, super sleeper, terrific football player. So that's not even a need. How long was it a need for this team? No longer a need. And Joe Douglas knows this because he was in Philly. When defensive line and corner are good, you're in business. You're just filling around them on defense.
So Matthew Dominic on YouTube wants to know, Adam, outside of quarterback, where do you see the Jets making changes?
Well, wide receiver something. We got to see what they do with Corey Davis here. He's got a high cap number. He's making a lot of money. We'll see if I mentioned this. I think maybe this summer when I was doing it, someone interviewed me to talk about the Jets. I said, "Watch what happens to Corey Davis next year because it's the final year of his deal. He's making a lot of money. Mm-hmm. He's a decent player. He's got size, high character guy. But that to me is a discussion. They're good at tight end. Offensive line, they're going to have to do a couple things there. There's no question about it. And Becton, I love that he's down a weight. I'm told Breece Hall's doing credit. In fact, I was told he's ahead of schedule, and that's great. But as you saw without him, it's a different story. And when you want to run the football, you got to be able to do it. And they've got to have a good backup now. Is Bam Knight that guy? Nice story. Good job of scouting by the Jets.
Got Michael Carter too.
Right, Michael Carter's a good change. I think I don't know what happened to him. I thought he'd get the ball more, but the offense obviously dropped off. Breece Hall was special. The draft was. I was in Vegas for the draft. I remember telling my friend Scott Farrell, we were working for Sports Grid. I said, not only will this turn out to be the best draft in 20 years for the Jets, this might be their best of all time. And he looks at me. I said, dude, they got 3 guys who could be Rookie of the Year. And guess what? Breece Hall, they would have had a fight between Wilson and Hall to be Offensive Rookie of the Year. That's how great it was.
They might be talking about this draft, not just Jets fans, but NFL followers for a quarter century. They might be looking at this draft.
And I like Clemens, the kid from Texas A&M, Jermaine Johnson.
Max Mitchell.
Jermaine Johnson's going to be a good player. Who didn't contribute are the rookies?
Well,
who didn't get
Jets
hurt,
have high hopes for Jeremy Ruckert, too.
Yeah. They're
kid out of Ohio State.
But here's the thing. The 2 tight ends, and you saw Conklin was kind of, although I think he could do better with yards per catch because I know that's something they looked at analytically. Obviously, better quarterback play will help that. I know they're pretty happy with the tight ends. No, Joe, this is definitely Joe's best year. I mean, I don't know what else to say.
Yeah.
The quarterback, obviously, he's got to get that right. And, we can talk about Derek Carr and others if you want. But this roster is so good right now.
Yeah. So you've been on the Derek Carr story for a bit. Joe Douglas just talked to the media today for the first time since the Jets entertained Carr in Florham Park. He said it was a fantastic visit, came away super impressed with him, highly intelligent, super competitive. What do you think about the possible fit? And then also, what's going to happen this week, not only with Carr and the Jets, because they're going to meet again, but the other potential suitors?
Yeah, so with Carr, he's going to talk to the Panthers here. It's really interesting. I'm trying to think if I've ever seen this before here in Indy. This is my 22nd combine, where a free agent player, because he's cut, so he can do whatever he wants, and the clubs can, that he's actually going to do it here. I'm trying to think of it.
Well, Mike Garafolo was on the show earlier.
Yeah, maybe
the only thing he mentioned was D'Angelo Hall. with the Giants and the Falcons, and all of a sudden he was walking the halls here, and then he entertained some visits.
I think Andrew Whitworth might have done it when his contract was up with the Bengals, maybe, because I remember seeing him here. I'm like, why is he here? Or then at Kentucky. I mean, Cincinnati's not too far from here. But no, look. In my first report on the Jets was, and this is before anyone knew, I said the Jets are going to be involved. People are looking at me, and in fact, I know I have a lot of Jet fans follow me, and there's this one guy loves Derek Carr. I can't think of the guy's name. He loves Derek Carr. I'm like, look, this is the Jets. You have to have a plan. Aaron Rodgers is one. Depending on who you speak with, I think he's still number one, but unfortunately they don't control that one. I would say Carr's 1A, and we'll see what happens. And I'm sure, knowing Joe Douglas a little bit, I'm sure he's got a list of other possibilities for the trade market. They're going to have a veteran. That guy's going to come in and start, whoever that's going to be. They want to develop Zach Wilson. Zach Wilson's got to take a step back, mature a little bit. And whether it's Carr, Rodgers, or some other veteran, I hope that guy could help him because he needs to learn what it's like to be a professional at this level. And it just didn't work out. Let's call it like it is. It's the one area where this football team, until you get a quarterback, you can't win. I mean, let's be honest about it.
Yeah.
The roster's really good. Mm-hmm. I said this with Derek Carr. It's a 11 to 12 win team. I'm serious about that. So that's 12-5 with everybody healthy. Yeah. Could it be better? Yeah. No, Derek didn't play well last season, but I think being in a better environment potentially because Carr's got other suitors. He's got Todd Downing, who I think worked with him for 3 years, 3 or 4 years right. With the Raiders, who was also their OC and also their quarterbacks coach. I know, talking to someone close to Derek, that having some people you could trust is super important. Having someone on staff that he can work with is super important. Now, Panthers, I don't know if he's had anyone there. Saints, okay, he knows Dennis Allen, obviously, he was his head coach for a year. But that matters. Support matters.
Let me ask you this in terms of Derek Carr, because if you're a Jets fan, I think you're excited at the opportunity to acquire Derek Carr, considering the level of success he's had. Now, granted, playing devil's advocate, why is somebody who's had the success that Derek Carr has had, one, available, right? Like, why is he available? Is it just it didn't work out? It
didn't work out.
Vegas?
Ethan, I'm going to give you an analogy, and this is a little strong here. I'm not saying he's Kurt Warner. Giants who are right in front of us know this. Kurt Warner was washed up when he was with it. He was done. He was gun shy, wasn't seeing the rush. We thought he was done. He goes to Arizona. Matt Leinart never got the job. He was a first-round pick.
Right.
He was terrific. So it's a great question. You should be asked. Any Jet fan should be skeptical. Okay, well, it's Derek Carr. The guy's been a good quarterback. What the heck happened? He got benched. He didn't play well. He was not a good fit for that system. The system they're running here, I'm told, is an old-school West Coast offense under Hackett. And by the way, he's played in this with the Raiders many years ago. It's a much better fit for him. He won't have to think as much. I think he was overthinking. And here, the great thing is the pass target group is really good. You got 2 good tight ends. Knowing Joe, he's gonna make sure the offensive line, which has got talent, is going to be better.
Yep.
It's a really good fit. And I'm not biased in any way. I think it's a better fit than New Orleans. I like that they've got an OC that is going to run a good system. And then other than that, now the Panthers, they don't have a quarterback, but they've got a great defense. Offensive line's okay. I just feel a little bit better. I think the Jets' talent overall is a little better.
Speaking of Rodgers, hard to get inside his mind. I'm not going to ask you to do that. But what do you feel about potential compensation for, I'm not just saying the Jets, for any team, if Rodgers and the Packers decide, hey, listen, it's time, we're going to part ways.
Particularly Rodgers, because they
run.
have to, due to their agreement, I think they actually have to do their best to move him. Last year's agreement, if he wants out. But, yeah, and leverage will determine this, how many teams. There'll be more than one team involved. I can't imagine it would go for less than a first-round pick. I get he's turning 40 later this year.
Yeah.
He's a quarterback. And here's the other thing, folks. Other than Jimmy Garoppolo, Derek Carr is a street free agent. It's Jimmy Garoppolo and all backups for free agency. I'm not counting Geno Smith, who's not going anywhere. Daniel Jones is not going anywhere. Lamar, who's not going anywhere.
Right.
I'm just talking of guys we know are going to be available.
Yeah.
This is why Derek Carr could ask for a decent amount of money, and this is why the Packers will do well. Probably a little bit better than people think. Now, again, depending on how many teams are involved, that determines leverage.
How many teams, or what is there a sleeper team that you think no one's talking about? Because let me just paint the picture. For Derek Carr, you kind of know, right? He's meeting with the Jets, the Saints, the Panthers. That's been reported. With Aaron Rodgers, I feel like the narrative has been the Jets and the Las Vegas Raiders. But
I don't see the Raiders. I've said that for 2 months now. Why would he made it clear last year? If he was going to be traded, he'd want to be in a rebuild. He doesn't want to be a rebuild with the Packers, he said. To be 100% clear here. Yeah. So why would he want to go to the Raiders? I get he's from that area, but you're not going to win. Like, if you go to the Jets, you're going to win. If you're a quarterback, you're going to be – what was it? They were 7-4. Okay.
7-4. Before the six-game losing
streak.
Okay, here.
So, look, you know the talent level on that team? You guys live it every day. This is a playoff. They are a lock playoff team with either Derek Carr or Aaron Rodgers. The question is, could they put it all together? We haven't been to free agency of the draft yet. And then the kids who were drafted last year will be better. If Breece Hall – you can't expect him to be 100%, but if he's 85%, you'll take that and the other two guys backing him up. We'll see if they bring someone else in. It's hard to knock this roster.
Yeah.
Safety is something we could look at maybe a little bit.
Well, the Jets signed Jordan Whitehead free agency last year. LaMarcus Joyner is an unrestricted. He's an unrestricted free agent, so he's got an expiring contract.
Yeah. But again, this is a really good roster. Linebacker, they're really good. D-line's good. Quinn Williams is unbelievable. How about Quincy? Been a nice surprise.
That's another guy with
expiring contract.
And his agent, Nicole Lynn, I think, has got a lot of work. She's got Jalen Hurts, so they got a lot of work to do.
Joe Douglas just said it today that Nicole Lynn and Quinnen Williams and the Jets have had good preliminary discussions, because Quinnen made it.
What a season. Oh.
Yeah, he made it known before the season ended as a locker room cleanup day that he wants a new contract and extension. So we'll have to see where that
He was drafted in 19, right?
2019. He was the last non-Joe Douglas.
Right, so he's got a fifth-year option plus 2 tags. So, they don't have to do it.
Well, that's what I was going to ask.
Teams don't typically, unless it's a quarterback, they typically don't like to do it that early because they have – you're getting them on a rookie contract.
Especially with a potential quarterback on the way.
Correct.
That's what I was going to ask.
And other guys, too.
Yeah, so if sticking down that line for Quinnen Williams, and I think Quinnen Williams is a fantastic player.
He came – guys, I know this from talking to teams that play the Jets. He was here first 3 years this past season. Now, here's what with him, he had to mature. He just grew up a little bit. Once he learned how to be a professional, what I'm talking about is understanding what's expected of you. This guy's a man. Like, he had a great season.
Team MVP, and he
was he an All-Pro this season?
Yes.
I thought so.
Great force off the field.
I think he's a really good kid, but there's a social maturity you have to have, is what coaches tell me. He needed to get that, and he got it. In fact, I did vote for him for Pro Football Writers Association. I think first team All-Pro. I'm pretty certain of it.
So you think that was the biggest difference for Quinnen Williams, the off-the-field maturity?
Nothing. It's just it's the approach to the job to understand. Okay, dude, you were a high first-round pick. We get it. Play like it. You got to bring it. You can't just bring it when you feel like it. And as guys, I remember Brandon Graham went through this at Eagles. I'll give you who's going to be. I don't know if he'll be a Pro Football Hall of Famer. He'll be in the Eagles Hall of Fame. He just needed to have the light go on. And when the light went on, you just talked about Williams being more of a leadership guy in the locker room. Brandon's like one of the all-time leaders of the Eagles.
Yes.
There's just he's a special. And Vinny Curry.
Yep.
Vinny will tell you.
Yeah.
And this is what happens. It just as you get it, we all do as we get into our 20s and 30s. And he's in his 20s, Quinnen. But good story.
Quinnen's so young for being such a good player as well. It's going to be interesting to see how it all shakes out between now and when the Jets speak to Nicole Lynn, Quinnen Williams' agent, more so, and
there's
decide
no rush.
what's going to happen.
They would love to get it done.
Of course.
But from a Jets standpoint, you have them under your control for such a long time.
Bears trading out of one.
I was asked this on Fox Sports Radio last Saturday. They asked me that before the ESPN story came out. I said, absolutely. Ryan Poles, why would you don't need a quarterback. Justin Fields, he's gifted. You know he's raw. Just develop him. Put talent around him.
Yeah.
They don't have a very good roster. You guys with the Jets see what happens when you draft well. You could rebuild this thing pretty quickly.
Yeah.
They have a quarterback. They have the worst pass rush in football. Their line is The receiver core, a bunch of giants who are not very good. They're just a bunch of tall guys other than Mooney. So they're in a total rebuild. They need, if 100%, they have to look to trade down.
Last question from me. Bryce Young, what does he weigh in at? Over 199.5.
I'm going over.
Are you? Really?
Oh, yeah.
Why?
Yeah. I think
I would say under.
You do.
He's probably at St. Elmo's.
He was listed at Alabama's website in the 190s, was he not?
He was, but
you know that. By the way,
no, I know college.
But here's the scary thing: they usually give the guys more height.
Yes.
If the guy's listed 6'1", they'll list him as 6'3". But if they're listing him as 190, you hope he's 200. I don't know. I would take the under.
Okay.
I have no idea. I'm just guessing. But That's going to be an issue for teams. I've been talking about
Oh,
this for
yeah,
a year
no
now
doubt.
with this kid. He's the best quarterback for the draft.
Yes.
But body type is a problem.
It's also going to be interesting because you would imagine, let's say, it's a focus to put on weight. Then the second the combine and the weigh-in's done, then he cuts back down. He doesn't weigh in at the pro day, or at least that's how you would play the game. Adam Kaplan, thank you so much
All right,
for
guys.
joining us
Thanks, brother.
on
Good
Live
seeing
from
you.
the Combine, presented by Verizon. We'll see how it all shakes out. Again, free agency, the legal tampering period, using air quotes, starts on March 13th before the actual league year begins on March 15th. That's
what's
right
that?
around the corner.
What?
But there's nothing like a Jets game day at MetLife Stadium. You can lock in your 2023 season tickets to catch every big moment next season and secure the best seats, lowest prices, and most exclusive benefits. Visit nyjets.com/season tickets to learn more. It happens here. You know, that sentence, EA, it happens here, could be in the Combine, because there's a lot that goes on throughout this week in Indianapolis, considering free agencies around the corner. The draft is now in full swing. Janae Coakley joins us on set.
She's around the corner.
Right around the corner.
Literally right around the corner over there.
So what did you think about the comments from Joe Douglas today?
Interesting. The thing that stood out to me, I mean, everyone wants to talk about the quarterback situation.
Yes, we do.
I know. I like the the Quinnen talk,
Yeah.
because I do think that's going to be an important part to this season. And he said great talks, and they like where they're moving forward, and about that contract extension. So I like what Joe said about that. I was feeling good about that. Is what I'm
Well,
saying.
with Quinnen Williams, Joe Douglas said the Jets don't have to make a decision on the fifth-year option until after the draft. That's something to keep in mind. Adam Kaplan, who was sitting where you just sat, said the Jets obviously have financial control, having a fifth-year option and then potentially 2 franchise tags. That's one of the benefits of having players, especially very talented young players, on rookie contracts. Janae, the Jets have a significant amount of expiring contracts of players who played very big roles for them in 2022. Of that group, who do you think, in your opinion, is potentially most important to keep or try to keep under contract?
See, now you're doing this to me, because I always have all these favorites, and I see this, but give me some names, because right now I'm going to say Quincy, just because I really like Quincy. And I like what he did. I like how he came up. The contract's not that big. You know, he could keep. I loved his relationship with Quinnen. I love that brother. I love that room. I love his relationship with C.J. Mosley. I'm going to say Quincy, but
I think it's a great selection.
Yeah,
It's going to be fascinating to see if that contract indeed does expire without the Jets having an extension in place once the league year commences on March 15th, what the market actually is for him. Because
Yes.
I do think, as much as the Jets appreciated Quincy Williams, I thought he loved it here. Not just his relationship with his brother, but you mentioned his relationship with C.J. Mosley. That entire defense, tight-knit unit. And again, he was a waiver find from the Jacksonville Jaguars, and he came here, and his career has really taken off.
and I like I said, he made such him and C.J. Mosley, the way they played. I just think Quincy was such a key part. A sneaky key part.
Yeah.
And I hope they keep him. I want him to be that top guy that they keep on this roster.
Yeah, I think the other guys that you could consider, like Sheldon Rankins, I think flew under the radar
Yep,
as well.
100%.
Because, and let's just
Feels like half of the offensive line.
Yes.
Oh, by the way,
Yeah, that's
it's
true.
either
I think it is
UFA or RFA.
So this is a good time to bring up something Joe Douglas said about Dwayne Brown. He said Dwayne Brown underwent shoulder surgery, which is to nobody's surprise. He basically played through the season with a shoulder injury. He was the Selfless Warrior Award winner on the team, which was a new award, which was basically given to Dwayne Brown because he played through an injury. And so he underwent surgery. No word on if he will, in fact, return or not for 2023.
He's also a guy that was thinking about retiring and still
Yes.
stayed with the shoulder, played, and like you said, that selfless warrior. And he was such a key part to being that veteran guy and to show these young guys how to play and what to play for.
Dwayne Brown, George Fant, Connor McGovern, 3 guys that'll come into focus. Dwayne Brown's the only one under contract, but he also might not play football in 2023, so that is definitely a position to keep in mind.
Yeah, but you both are right there. Listen, the guys had the shoulder issues early on in the season. He could have said, "You know what? I'm
proved
going to get surgery. The checks are going to keep on coming in." But he played predominantly the entire season with one arm. I actually think Dwayne Brown, post-surgery, I haven't talked to him. Nobody has told me this. He feels like a guy who also really embraced it here. Him and Saleh go back to their days together in Houston way back when they were much younger. He was such a big culture piece inside the locker room, and I think he sees what's developing here. This is one of the finer young rosters in the National Football League. I would not be surprised at all to see Dwayne Brown back in green and white.
Me neither, but Janae, what's your take on having most of the mock drafts right now, having the Jets selecting an offensive lineman? Like, do you think that's a likely scenario for the Jets?
I do, because let's be realistic. How many O-linemen did you name this so far? This is a team that went through so many O-linemen this year, and we're still able to do what they're able to do. I mean, another thing that Joe Douglas brought up was Mekhi Becton. And, you know, and then his press conference, he said that he's the happiest he's ever seen him. He's in a great place. He's in a great spot. AVT coming back healthy. I think they're the 13th pick. I think an O-lineman, I think will do. Think about it. You have AVT, you got a healthy Mekhi, you got the guys on that line, and you got the running game of Breece Hall. I think O-lineman would be great, especially with all the injuries they had this past year. And plus, Joe Douglas loves his O-lineman.
That is very
He wants to build it up on both sides of the line of scrimmage. Lakin Tomlinson will be back. You would figure, hey, does Elijah Vera-Tucker go back to his home at guard? And then Max Mitchell, the Jets were very happy about what they got out of him his rookie season. If Becton is back healthy, maybe Brown is back, you drafted a lineman. I mean, this offensive line that was decimated by injuries down the stretch could look far different at the beginning of the 2023 season.
You know, Janae, being the person that covers the team the most out of our prior guests, I think this is a fitting question for you. Who's a player in 2022 that you might have thought performed well or performed fine, but you think is really in 2023 could take it to a next level? And whether that's because of a quarterback change, whether that's because of another year in the system, another year in the NFL, just who's somebody that you think we should be talking about more in this offseason for someone who could be primed to have a breakout year?
Offense or defense?
Whatever you want to go, or you could do one of each.
Right now,
the board is open.
Right now, the name that's came to mind immediately is a guy that I always talked about in the offseason during training camp the last 2 years, Elijah Moore. I truly believe that this is a kid that is coming into his own. He's matured. He's had that season under his belt. I think you're going to see him be the Elijah Moore that everybody thinks Elijah Moore is going to be. I think he's ready to have that breakout season. Also, can I throw in Max Mitchell? I know he's a rookie and everything, and he was hurt. I love the way he played on the line, and no one ever really talked about it.
Yeah.
And then, I mean, AVT, he's hurt, but he's awesome anyway, so that's not really a breakout year.
Yeah,
that doesn't even count.
Awesome.
He's already had his breakout year. But he's a name everybody talks about when Breece went down, when AVT went down too, 2 plays later. I think that was just as crucial as Breece.
Yeah. What about you, EA? Do you who's a guy that you think maybe could benefit from any kind of change, or just because he's a Jet for another year?
Jermaine Johnson, I think that, again, defensive line rotation. Obviously, he's very talented. He made a couple really freaky plays. I think about that sack against the Bills, the home upset of Josh Allen, where Josh Allen is going to get outside and win that battle 9 times out of 10 against defensive ends. He's got a freaky athletic ability. And then on the other side of the ball, I go to Jeremy Ruckert. Robert Saleh, he was unprompted late in the year. He's talking about Ruckert and what the Jets feel about him. And we were talking to Daniel Jeremiah about it earlier today. I think it was Jeremiah. We've had so many people stop by the table. This is what's so great about it.
This is a popular place.
This is so great in Indianapolis. But Ruckert's going to help you. He's another guy that gets after you in the run game, and his athleticism is underrated because he was playing on an Ohio State team that featured the likes of Garrett Wilson, Chris Olave.
Right. And he was hurt at the beginning.
Yeah, right. He came out of school with that foot injury. Right. Yeah. So I'll be watching him a lot.
Yeah. Robert Saleh kind of alluded to it at the end of the season that Jeremy Ruckert was almost playing catch up for most of the spring, and then when you're playing catch-up in the spring, you're playing catch-up in the summer and then the regular season.
Where would you go?
I was going to say the tight ends in general.
Yeah.
And I was going to say Tyler Conklin and CJ Uzomah because let's just play hypothetical here. If it is Rodgers or Carr playing quarterback for the Jets, and let's say it's Carr just because we know he's the only guy who has physically met with the Jets. I think about his dynamic with Darren Waller, and obviously Darren Waller's a fantastic tight end, one of the best in the league, but I do think the Jets have two very good tight ends in Tyler Conklin and C.J. Uzomah, and if a quarterback opens things up for people like Elijah Moore on the outside, it would only benefit the guys on the inside like those two. So I'm going to go with the tight ends. I do like the Jermaine Johnson answer as well.
What about Michael Clemens, too? I think Michael could have a really breakout with 1 year under his belt.
Yeah, what I like about Michael Clemens a lot, too, is that he plays special teams as well.
Yes.
And so I think that he's such a freak in that perspective as well. You think about Jermaine Johnson and Michael Clemens
Punt
both
blocks.
blocking punts in their rookie seasons. But
Well, are you going to ask Jay about quarterbacks at all?
yeah, I was about to. I wanted to ask.
What do you mean? What are we talking about quarterbacks? Come on.
I wanted to ask Janae a question as a launching pad from YouTube into a Derek Carr talk. One of the questions here, and this is, I think, what you would consider one of the flaws, if you're looking at it from a pro-con of each quarterback, one of the cons, at least from a perspective-wise in terms of Derek Carr, is the stats when it comes to cold weather. And so I know that's like so minor, but also people read into that. One of the questions is how significant do you think the cold weather stats are regarding Derek Carr?
I think it's so overrated. They played in cold weather, playing in warm weather. Oh, he played in California, so he can't play. And let's be realistic. We kind of had a mild winter where these last couple of years. I think it's silly to even talk about stuff like that. I mean, I don't think it's going to play that much of a factor. Do you know what? I don't know. I think it's such a, when people are like, well, he can't play in cold weather. No, you play football, guys. You know what I'm saying? These people play. They practice the way play the game. You know what I'm saying? You play to win the game. These guys are out there. They don't care if it, yes, it stinks if it's cold, but when you're doing your sideline stuff and it's cold, you bundle up and you keep doing it, right? I mean, don't tell a professional athlete, we're not that good in cold weather. I don't like it. Like, I don't know.
And the Jets want to run the ball a lot, too.
That's what I'm saying. Like, and you got Breece Hall and you got, I don't know. I think it's completely an overrated stat. I don't like it.
I agree. I mean, you have to throw the ball well in the National Football League to win. We know that. But the Jets, I think, are going to do some ground and pound with Nathaniel Hackett. You look at his run games over the years when he was an offensive signal caller. I'm not saying the Jets have Derrick Henry, but they have a different stable of backs. We talk about Breece Hall. We talked about Donovan Knight. We talk about Michael Carter. Don't forget about Michael Carter, please. I do think when you talk about Carr, the cold weather stat is overrated because how many of those games were the Raiders underdogs in? When you're talking about a team going to the East Coast playing.
And what do you consider cold weather? Sorry, what do you consider cold weather?
It's probably sub 32. Are we talking?
So okay.
And how often are you playing those games?
Truth be told, my Wi-Fi is not working, so I can't look that up. But the question is the cold weather stats. I would imagine it'd be 35 and below, maybe.
Or
and also,
34.
but to your point, like how many cold weather games in the months of November and December did we have at MetLife Stadium? And
I mean, it's not like the Raiders were making the playoffs year in and year out, and that's not a dig at Derek Carr. I'm just saying my point is at Las Vegas, they play inside. Oakland, it doesn't get sub 30, 35 degrees. So my point is you're playing on the road. Typically, you're an underdog in that situation. Oh, by the way, this Jets roster, I think, is one of the tops in the National Football League.
Okay, Janae,
100%.
I have a two-pronged question.
Okay.
That this is how we're going to wrap up the show live from Indianapolis, presented by Verizon. Part one of the question is, what is your take on Derek Carr versus Aaron Rodgers? Those seem to be the front runners. And two, who do you think will be the day one starter for the Jets 2023?
Wow.
I know.
Whoa, okay.
Way to go.
Whoa.
I'm going to opposite for freezing temperatures.
Let's
we go to
wrap.
high heat here.
Listen, I think that was overrated, and now you're going to throw this at me?
Full count, bases loaded. I'm throwing the fastball.
Okay. Here's the thing with Carr and Rodgers. Yeah, you just said it. This is a very good Jets roster. I don't think you necessarily need a superstar to come in and take. You got Garrett Wilson. You got a great line. You got Breece. You got running back. And, I'm sorry, on the other side of the ball, you have a championship defense playing. You just need a guy in there. So, I mean, everybody talks about Rodgers being this great quarterback. He's only been to one Super Bowl. I mean, he's a great player, do not get me wrong, but he also was in the dark for 3 days, and he also is not sure he wants to retire. He also, not sure what he wants to do. He's also 38 years old. I mean, Carr, I think, would be a great fit for this offense and this team, and he obviously not debating. He's not thinking about, well, what do I want to do? What do I want to do? And you got a lot of young guys on this roster. You got young guys they're going to watch and see how these veterans operate. You want someone in it all. You want that guy. You want the quarterback, that leader in that locker room to be that guy, to win and to show you how you love the game of football. And listen, I'm not saying anything about Rodgers. I'm just saying I want a guy who wants to be here right now.
I think that's the great way to end.
So
day one.
So the part.
Oh yeah.
Oh, the part two.
I was going to let it go.
I was going to throw someone else's name out there. Maybe I don't know. I was going to make.
Okay. Well, how about this?
I was going to say Derek.
Technical director Matt Sickoff really likes this question. He's giggling over there in the corner.
Yeah. I you know what?
Who do you? All right, I'm going to ask you. Who do you want? Oh, I'm getting wrapped. Sorry, look at me.
Yeah, I know.
That's Chris Evans.
I'm getting wrapped. We're getting wrapped from all directions. I'll tell you off there. How about that?
Okay.
Because I don't want to get in trouble here.
Well, we already are.
Yeah, okay. That's great. Well, anyway.
I think it sounded like she voted for Carr as opening day starter. I don't know.
But we don't know for sure because it was not in Sharpie.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Do not play this tape. Opening day.
That's how we're going to wrap up the Tuesday edition of Live from the Combine presented by Verizon. We will be back tomorrow, Wednesday, our final live show here on site in Indianapolis. And again, if you want to see what Joe Douglas said, check out NewYorkJets.com. A lot of great nuggets on Derek Carr, on the quarterbacks, on the draft. And we will see you tomorrow.